Welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast, your regular insight into leadership communication.
Hello and welcome to the Ideas on Stage podcast. Today I am delighted to be speaking with Lenka. I'm going to let her pronounce her last name because I know I'm not going to get it right. But she is joining us from Barcelona, Spain, and is the marketing communications manager at Boston Scientific. She has a really interesting background and experience at this company, and we're going to take some time today to dig into the role of communication internally within a company and its way to drive culture, and talk a little bit about how to have effective events. Our companies have been working together for a little while. And before we go any further, I just want to say, Lenka, welcome. And would you please share with us, the listeners, a little bit about who you are and what you do at Boston Scientific?
Sure. So, hello and good morning, Rose, and thank you so much for having me. And it's a pleasure to share my thoughts with you and the listeners today. So, let me start with adding a little bit more information about myself. So, my surname, which is so difficult to pronounce, is Brusakova. So I'm originally from Czech Republic, but as you correctly said, currently I'm based in Barcelona in Spain. And a little bit about my profile. I'm leading the regional communications at Boston Scientific, and specifically, I work for a fantastic and exciting region which is called Growth Emerging Markets, shortly the GEM, and it covers multiple countries. It's a huge geography going from the Eastern European countries through Middle East and Africa. So it's a really, really very interesting place to be, very multicultural, and it's an exciting job that I have the pleasure to have. I've been with the company for a while. Started actually very young as a student 10 years ago. Last year I celebrated my 10th anniversary, and I've been 7 years dedicated to different communication roles in the company. And I'm an enthusiast in any type of communication, any areas of communication, but it's true that perhaps the events, this is maybe the area the closest to my heart. It's also because it's probably the first one where I started to learn at the time, even as an intern. So it's been with me for a while now, and I really, really enjoy working on events.
Amazing. Thank you, Lenka. And I know that we really share a common passion for communication, for events. I know for myself, I used to lead internal communication and an events calendar at a startup in San Francisco. This was at the beginning back in like 2015 when having a head of culture started becoming a thing, head of creating that internal experience that feels like it's got a heartbeat so that all employees can sense what it's like to be connected to this company. Because today, a lot of our tribal experience has to do with our work. I also studied anthropology and, just how humans need connection to feel really motivated for a purpose. So I want to ask you, Lenka, why are you passionate about communication?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably because I really like to be connected with people and connecting the people. So that's probably the main reason, because I have the opportunity to collaborate with everyone across the organization. And also I have the opportunity, or it's a core of my job, to try to put myself in their shoes and try to figure out how to help them to feel being part of the team. And that's something that makes me very passionate.
Exactly. Okay, so for people who maybe are less passionate about this topic than you and I are, I'm thinking about culture in companies, which a lot of leaders right now are thinking about and probably having some real challenges with, given the global atmosphere right now with COVID and remote work. I know that this year, Ideas on Stage got to help Boston Scientific again with the annual kickoff event that happens per department or medical focus within the company. I want to ask you, though, why do you see, or what is the connection to you between internal communication, these events that we have within our companies and we spend a lot of money and time on? What is the connection between, and what is the value between these events, this kind of communication, and culture?
Yeah, so I believe the events are just one of the platforms actually which can drive the culture, and typically the events and these kickoff events that, of course, for many companies, I believe, are happening on annual basis typically, and it's I don't know. From my perspective, these represent one of the strongest platforms and the moment of the year, really to remind everyone on the culture and make sure that they are on the board fully, and that they are part of the journey of that company. So yeah, that's I believe the biggest value of having these kickoffs on annual basis, and invest the efforts and also of course money in their organization. Yeah, and I mean, as I said, it's one of the platforms. It's not the only one, but it's maybe something where we have the opportunity to come together as the entire organization and really set the tone for the year, or 3, 5, depends on the focus and the type of strategy that we are focusing on during that event.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the strong moment for the company culture, I believe.
Yeah. I remember we used to, in the HR department at Teespring, we would say culture was really what you reward and recognize, right? So what gets the spotlight? And I love that you said communication basically rhymes with connection. You also talked about compassion, being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And so these internal events offer us a moment to be able to connect and hear what's important, both at the highest level for mission and objectives within the company, but also get a sense of connection within the team and bring people from around the world together. So today, Lenka, and I want to hear about the creative ways that you brought people together in the company this year, because I know you had some really beautiful, inventive ways of doing this that maybe will inspire some listeners of how they too can bring culture and joy and connection to life within their company, even when it's remote. What do you believe gets in the way of culture, and a healthy culture in particular? What blocks us from communicating and connecting today that we need to be careful about?
Yeah, so I mean, if I should comment really on the specific situation of this very weird year or year and a half, it's of course the absence of the face-to-face connection, which I believe also in the past, our kickoff events, they were typically held in face-to-face setup. So it's been the first year this time where we really took everyone on a virtual platform, and then had this kickoff event organized completely in a digital format. Yeah, and that was of course the primary and the biggest obstacle. Then if your question is a little bit broader about what really sometimes can be difficult or prevent the company culture to flourish and to be really implemented in the same way across or felt in the same way across the organizations, there are many other aspects, and yeah, I would say that if there are any issues in any company with spreading the culture and making all the employees feeling the same culture, it's the problem of the internal communications department usually. And yeah, there might be different reasons for that. Yeah, it could be maybe lack of the how, or really lack of some common goal. which I mean, that's the fundamental part for each culture. But it could be also similarly some inefficiencies in the way how this common goal is actually channeled across the company. It's not luckily the situation of my company, I believe, and we really have very strong mission and values set up on a global level, and that we bring, of course, also, or we aim to bring them always very close across the company, as well as in the Growth Emerging Markets region, which I support. And and also luckily we have a very inspiring leader leading us in GEM. Yeah, and then also he brings, of course, very unique element to our culture as the region. So, yeah.
Great. Yes, I think the lack of common goal and how and spreading that efficient way and how a company works together on a mission, really that center focus, being able to have a clear target together is such a uniter, much like communication. Okay, so definitely absence of face-to-face communication this year. And so your role in internal communication, or you're actually looking at the regional piece, when things are going really well, what are a few of the key performance indicators? What are a few of the signals that we're nailing it? We're doing great. The culture is going well. Things feel healthy. Communication is flowing. How do you know that that's happening?
Yeah, so this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in with internal communications. But of course, there are some way how to measure this and how to take the temperature checks across the organization. I think that probably nobody still figured out the super best way how to really get this information. But we run surveys where we are asking our employees on a regular basis, if they understand where the company is going, if they understand the company strategy, if they feel motivated to deliver on this strategy and so on. So there is we have developed through the years a set of questions that we are asking the employees, and then we can also, of course, compare when we repeat similar questions. We can compare how we stand compared to the last year and so on, and then we can reflect on what we have been doing different, what we shouldn't do, and so on. And and very similarly, so this is one set of questions that we use on the strategy, but similarly also we have, even on a global level, we have regular employee engagement surveys that are asking more towards the culture. So there are ways how to at least try to measure. I have to say I don't believe it's 100% clear way, or it doesn't give us the 100% clear picture, but at least it's something tangible and gives us the idea. I mean how we are doing, and and also I believe that it's very good to ask really the employees at some informal occasions where this doesn't maybe reach everyone, because we are a big organization, but to ask the employees in various occasions what they think, how they feel, and so on, that also helps. But of course, maybe the size of the audience that you can interview in this space, it's quite limited.
Yes. Okay, so definitely using surveys and getting pulse checks more in that informal manner as well, just communicating or speaking with people. And it's unfortunate that with all the technology we have and AI, et cetera, that we still don't have this easy way of measuring success in some of the employee engagement culture arena, but I'm sure we'll be seeing some new tech and solutions for that in the near future. Now, Lenka, let's go into a little story land here. Can you take us through your experience of deciding on your sort of out of the box idea for how to generate more engagement this last year in GEM, in what you're working on. How did you get there? What was going on in your mind, and what was this idea that you had?
So actually there were a couple of elements that we had to completely rethink, and then we had to adjust all the mix of the channels that we have been using for the communication across the region. So that was one big thing, because of course suddenly everyone started to be connecting simply from the home, and also we tried to help the employees really to kind of compensate these missing interactions in the offices and so on. So one thing was that we brought, for example, a program that was about kind of substituting these internal interactions that we were suddenly missing from one day to another. And yeah, so we developed the program that we called GEM in this together, and kicked it off, I think, in April. Yeah, it was around April last year. And it was, I mean, it was very funny to actually support this initiative. And within this program, we had like daily, we were sharing stories and content on a daily basis, every day with a different focus. And I think the most exciting thing around that was also that everyone who participated in this initiative, in this program, had the chance to influence who is going to be participating in the next episode. So imagine, for example, I remember we had on Wednesdays, these Wednesdays were the most popular days within this initiative, and that was because Wednesdays were dedicated to so-called Knock Knock initiative, where we asked the 3 employees every week to record a very short homemade video clip showing the other colleagues in the region how they actually deal with the new challenges, what they do, how does their life look like, how they are doing. So it was like it was all voluntary. I have to say we didn't receive any pushback from anyone who was nominated, which I found really amazing. And we really collected so many beautiful videos with so many wonderful messages from the colleagues, and then it was very engaging. And also we discovered a lot of talented people in the organization with the great storytelling skills, and then also a couple of I would say very talented potential directors of movies.
And oh my God, this is actually kind of making me tear up, because I'm thinking back to last year and April, and how many people around the world suddenly felt so alone or isolated or overwhelmed, managing children at home, managing so many new unknowns while trying to hit targets within their company. And I'm just thinking from, what a beautiful gift for you, for Boston Scientific, to offer your employees this opportunity to stay connected through sharing the hard in a way that's focused on the resilient. So by asking, how are you making it through this time, and having people be able to showcase, I can just imagine some of the possibilities for this. And I happen to know that one of the ways that you participated was through music. And I'd like to come back to that, because yes, maybe talented directors, maybe talented storytellers, but also talented musicians. And I love that this is highlighting the humanity and the person inside of these employees. And suddenly you actually managed to take the hardship and turn it into an opportunity for even greater intimacy within a company. So I bow to that. I have a lot of respect for that kind of creativity. And I want to ask, so tell me a little bit about the GEM Rock Band.
Yeah, so it will be my pleasure, because I had the honor to be part of that also. No, but the GEM Rock Band, Actually, this idea or the initial idea is from the previous year, from already 2019, and from and actually from the last year where we had the last big face-to-face kickoff event. So we were also, for the face-to-face kickoff events, we were also always looking for a way how to give the space to the colleagues, how to put as many of them on the stage, and how to help the people in the team to get to know each other on a more profound and personal level. And the Jamrock band was actually born like that. And imagine, we have really so many talented people in the Jam region that it was so easy for me to do that. No, I just one day asked, okay, I know there are a couple people who are really very talented in music, and maybe we can ask around and see if we would be able to put the band together, and if at one of the parties at the event we could, have a little concert featuring this music band. And it was at the end incredibly easy, and then we put together this rock band, and they had the opportunity. I was not with them the first year. I was only organizing everything in the background and then helping them to shine. And they really came with excellent performance. I think it was the highlight of the party, if not of the event itself. And and it was fantastic. And so after this live performance, we had a lot of colleagues across the organization asking, what will happen now with the Rocks band, and we want more. But of course, then COVID hit, and it was not possible to promise more performances and so on. But we were still in touch, of course, with everyone on the band. And one day somebody from the band suggested, look, why don't we just, in line with our agility and adaptability, why don't we try to record something from our different locations and make create a remote experience for our fans in the company. So yeah, and it happened. It happened also just within a few weeks. I just couldn't imagine this going so smoothly, and I had the opportunity to join them for this performance. It was incredible. Really, really enjoyed that, and also it helped me to fill some of these free evenings when person just didn't know what to do anymore in the quarantine. So yeah, it was an excellent experience.
Oh, I just love that. And I know from the research and experience I've had in employee engagement, and I remember attending Great Place to Work back in 2013, 14, and so much of our motivation at work and our sense of belonging comes from how much we feel comfortable being ourselves in the workplace and expressing ourselves. And so when there's this kind of celebration of personal talent and then bringing those talents together, it's no wonder to me that Phil Wakenall, who you have worked with a lot, and my colleague, just glows about Boston Scientific, because I hear from the work that Phil and our other colleagues have done on the last few years with the annual kickoff events, that this is verbatim. He said, we would walk through walls for these guys because you are so kind and so caring of even your vendors. And Phil really said, and I agree, that the mark of a healthy culture within a company, you don't see it in how people treat the leaders. You see it in how people treat the N-3, the most, task-oriented employee within the team, as well as the, boots on the ground and vendors and people who aren't necessarily in the limelight, where those interpersonal connections happen, and the quality of that moment, that exchange really shows how healthy and well cared for and motivated and connected and invested employees feel. So okay, to all those listening at your company, if you're in internal communication or HR or some realm of internal events, just consider, as Lenka is sharing, how incredible it is to create a platform for people to share their voices or their gifts and their talents, as well as what I love is show some of the hardship in a creative way, how to express difficulty, because that also makes us feel like we belong and we're not alone. We really need to be able to see the challenge in each other's lives. So I want to maybe emphasize one last time in terms of creativity, because I think this is an area that we all need to stay very fresh on, especially as we're facing Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting and online experience of working digitally right now. Lenka, how did you and your team, and I know Ideas on Stage in Europe really worked on this with you, how did you end up deciding to structure or shape the theme of this year's annual kickoff that needed to happen virtually? How did you make that fun?
Yeah, no, it was quite a journey, I have to say, and also wanted to comment that Phil and his colleagues, they actually really kind of walked through walls for us, and I'm so much grateful for that, because it was the first time we really had to organize events on such a scale completely remotely, and it was a great challenge. And Ideas on Stage team really supported us a lot in that. But I think also the collaboration with Phil when we were developing the team and so on, we were just building on each other's ideas, and I think this is the best way to do anything. And at the end, we decided to go with the theme of athletic games. And everything was all about sports and different sports disciplines. And I mean, it was, I believe, a fantastic decision, because it helped us a lot it was addressing a lot of the challenges that we were facing. So and these are the usual challenges that we have even in the face-to-face events. So that, for example, we have a really we always want to involve a lot of speakers in the program, and that's the usual problem, because no one, of course, wants to listen to 150 long and boring presentations and this format.
Oh, not too boring, but yes, so many speakers, so many speakers.
No, I hope I didn't mean it really as a criticism for the previous speakers, but it's difficult to keep the attention of the audience when you have to bring so many speakers one after another on the stage, even when it's face to face, and even if they are fantastic, it's difficult. So this theme of the sports game, or it was kind of like TV show capturing the sports disciplines happening in the GEM region, kind of, and it helps us to bring many people in and give them the space and opportunity to share something, their highlights with everyone in GEM. To conclude, what also one of the benefits of going with this team was that in sports, of course, there are a lot of team disciplines, and then that also very well resonated with kind of the culture that we have, because we are as one team, and it was excellent. And we also we went a little bit beyond the frame of sports only. So we also had some sessions dedicated to our main coach for the region, and the main coach, these were the colleagues from the HR department taking care of the athletes who then perform on the stadium and so on. So it was really at the end such a great decision to go with this team, because it just gave us a lot of possibilities and opportunity to be really creative, which I mean that's the best part in the organization of anything.
It sounds like it. It just sounds like there's so much enthusiasm for being creative, and I admit I have seen some of these videos that you put together with Phil, and they are hilarious. I mean, just for listeners to imagine, we're seeing batons being passed between colleagues pretending to run or actually running in different environments with backgrounds. And so passing the baton, hearing sports announcements essentially. And what I want to emphasize, because we work with a lot of different companies on different events, is choosing a theme can make all the difference. It's like choosing a uniform, is suddenly everything is connected. So I love that you went with this athletic games theme for this year. And it sounds like you scored. It sounds like you really pulled it off and like people really enjoyed it. So actually, let's look at the hard part about these events online briefly, okay? Lenka, what are some of the big challenges in running an event online right now? Were there some fears that you had going into it? How did you overcome that? Like, you know, a lot of people are trying to organize things right now. Do you have any advice or compassion for people who are in that position?
Yeah, so Rose, I don't know where to start. There are so many challenges really organizing a kickoff event of this size online. It was quite a tough task, I have to say, for my entire team. But we made it, and at the end also, I have to say that we were totally amazed by the feedback of the team, which, I mean, it was excellent. It was outstanding. So it seems that really altogether we did a great job. Although also part of that feedback was that, it was very well organized. We had fun. We understand the strategy. We are motivated, but please, we would like to meet face to face next time. So it's, I think, in this special year, of course, it had to happen in this format, but still, for sure, in the future, I believe that we should come back to the face-to-face events one day when it's possible, and I hope it will happen very soon. And as for the challenges that we had to face, so there were really many. Maybe the major one was that it was so new, and we didn't know where we were really heading into. So. And then there were also a lot of incorrect assumptions from our team and I believe everyone in the organization. So one of those that I hear very commonly with these incorrect assumptions is that it's easier to organize virtual event, and I mean we don't need to treat it with such a sense of urgency, while at the end, it's completely the opposite, I have to say. So if I should highlight or give a recommendation to anyone who is in front of such a task, that would be really start planning a lot of time in advance, because it requires much more planning and organization. Every second of that event needs to be managed. So it's not like in the face-to-face events, there is usually some space for improvisation, and we can even kind of give some guidance to our speakers even while they are already on the stage. But here it's just not possible once you are going live and then streaming the event and everyone is in a different location. There is no space for last minute correction, and it's different. It's much more stressful, I would say. And then maybe another incorrect belief about organizing big virtual events is that it actually doesn't require so much investment. Also, it's I know that, of course, for the face-to-face event, there is the travel part, the accommodation, and you need to take care of the guests, and it's of course different type of investments coming in there. But also, if somebody is in front of this challenge and is going to organize a huge virtual event, also the budget required for that is not very small. It's of course allocated to totally different items, but budget is still needed also for this kind of events if they should be successful. And I don't know. Then, of course, I mentioned it already at the beginning that it was completely new experience, and also it required totally new capabilities. So that was a big challenge, a lot of learnings for my team and myself. And yeah, we had to really totally rethink the way we do the events, and it was quite tough sometimes, and we had to spend a lot of extra hours, little bit fighting sometimes with the technology. But yeah, at the end, everything went super smoothly. But it was quite tough to really learn how the quite complex platform works, and so on and so on. And then from the side of connecting with the audience, of course, for me, the biggest issue is that, of course, you completely lose the human contact there. And this has always been for me one of the most beautiful things, one of the most beautiful ingredients and elements of the kickoff event. So suddenly we were totally without this ingredient, and I think yeah, it was missing a little bit, because normally after the day of presenting the strategy and then connecting everyone is looking forward to connect on a little bit informal level in the evening and so on, and to have some I don't know to have some activities like a team building, or to go for a treasure hunt outside, and all these things that we were doing in the past. So that was missing there, of course. And then I think, and this is maybe not only related to virtual events, but to actually anything nowadays in internal communication and in communicating with employees. We are fighting all the time against a huge fatigue already. And I have to say this really in the last months. We can see it in the performance of other channels as well. So it's difficult to really keep the colleagues watching something on the screen. And I think the more actually we continue in these virtual activities, the more difficult it is to really keep the attention. And we are fighting for the attention and facing this huge fatigue from the screens, I would say. Also, I can also observe it on myself that my attention span nowadays is not what it used to be. And yeah, even though I really try, but sometimes I'm just too tired and totally switch off whenever the topic or the speaker or whatever I'm watching or reading is just not super interesting. So these were some of the challenges that were maybe specific to the virtual platform. But then, of course, there were also on top of that the usual challenges that we had to deal with, even in the usual in the setup that we used to have for the face-to-face events. And that was for our region specifically the language barrier, the different time zones, coordination of a lot of speakers, and and I mean, all this really made this experience quite challenging. But at the end, I mean, really everything went so well that it was also very satisfying.
That was amazing what you just shared. I need to just bullet point summary of these myths, essentially, the myths of leading and creating and organizing online events. I heard from Lenka that the myths we're busting today are virtual events take less time, they will be easier, less expensive, or require less investment, won't necessarily require new capabilities, or, we've done that before, so we got this. Connecting with the audience will somehow work, but that's really not so easy at all to do. There is screen fatigue we're dealing with. And I know we're moving from myths now just to challenge. Attention spans are dropping. And then on top of all of this, the normal difficulties and challenges of organizing an event. What you just described is massive. those are huge challenges to overcome. And the fact that your team and you and many other teams around the world have been doing everything they can to basically build the plane while flying it is extraordinary and deserves a lot of recognition. And I know that this kind of goes across the board around functions in companies everywhere. You know, everyone's trying to do their normal job while, you know, masked and indoors and on a screen. And our brains have not evolved for this. We have not evolved for this. We're not there yet. So we're sort of operating in an existence that we actually don't have the biological technology to support and be able to perform in our normal way and at our normal level. So I'm going to add my advice to everyone and my clients that I'm working with today. The things that have been helping me move through this time and what I'm offering to those I work with and support is the need for patience, self-care, taking time off of the screen, you know, even when we're at home, office hours, stop, put it away, shut your computer, turn off the lights, put your phone away. You have to assert really powerful boundaries in order to keep yourself healthy. And then the last one, and this has been so necessary. The saying goes, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. We need humor more than ever today. And I am doing my best to show up as an example of being silly at work with my clients on the screen, being myself, completely letting go of being too polished, because I think we're all starving for that human connection. So as much as I'm going to pay attention to, you know, what's in my background and can you see me on the camera or not, and like follow certain communication 101 basics, I also am going to do my best to like really look at your face, Lenka, and study who I'm sitting across from, even if you are on the other side of the world, and give my full attention to you. Because it is in listening, it is in this connection moment that we still feel our joy, our passion for what we're doing, the fulfillment and meaning. And I think we're running a lot of risks right now. It's clear in the media we're seeing with mental health. So the need for internal communication, the need for events, the need for time to connect has never been greater. Your role is so important. And I want to ask, I just mentioned listening. We've heard a little bit about, you know, the myths of and challenges of what it takes to run an online event. We've also heard a lot of how it can just shine through creativity and making it personalized. Coming back to communication and perhaps the future of internal communication, right? I'm focused right now on the power of listening in leadership. I'm developing a training, and I wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts about listening. Is it important? What is listening? Don't we do it anyway? What are your thoughts about listening in leadership? And do you have any recommendations for leaders and the power of listening right now?
Yeah, so actually, Rose, this is a very interesting topic, and it's also kind of close to my heart. And I really believe that listening skills, it's the fundamental skill for every leader if they want to be successful. So yeah, and I know that nowadays, of course, then when we appear to be talking to each other and interacting through the screen, it's even more difficult than before. It's not easy to listen really actively and successfully to people. I believe even when we have the face-to-face contact, but through the screen, it's totally brought another level of complexity into that. But it doesn't mean that it wouldn't be important anymore. It is the other way around. And you also mentioned a moment ago that really there is another huge global problem emerging around the mental health. And yeah, and I believe that all leaders, they need to be successful listeners and then know really how their organizations, how their employees and colleagues are doing to be of the best support to them. So it is very important. It's also the need to listen. I think it's been changing the way the internal communication is done a lot in the last years. Not only the previous year, which was of course completely different, but I could see a little change happening already steadily over a couple of years. So it's not anymore the classical the top-down one-way communication, but it's a conversation, it's a dialogue, and this is also what we have been doing in our company, and that's also what had a big influence on, for example, I mentioned at the beginning of reassessing the channels that we are using, how we are using them. So we opened new channels where everyone in the organization has the chance to speak up, to ask, and can collaborate across with no hierarchies coming in between and so on. So it's important, and I believe everyone in communications should remember that, and also try to give the space to everyone in the company to be heard.
Thank you, Lenka. I love that. And I'm also thinking about the way that you shone a light on the change in leadership and the change toward listening. Yes, we are moving away from accepting a top-down approach within our organizations and our social structures. And with millennials entering the workforce at full force, there's more and more demand for being heard and seen and supported. And as Steve Jobs said, we don't hire great people to tell them what to do. We hire great people so they can tell us what to do. And we need to make space for our employees to be able to share what they know so that our companies can thrive, so that our world can thrive. So Lenka, you mentioned that I'm just thinking about people who are also leading internal virtual events this year and in the future, and perhaps might face some hurdles in advocating for having enough budget and time to put these events together. Can I just ask, where did Boston Scientific, where did your team decide to allocate funds for this virtual event? Where did the money go that you needed?
Yeah, so for this year's virtual event, we really felt that we needed to deliver the content on a much higher level than before, because that was actually the only material that we were sharing, not having opportunity to have some more fun than through this virtual content. So we invested in creation of videos and other visual materials, and I think it's really paid off because we created a very coherent program, and also had a lot of funny moments and through these video stories. So actually the event was full of videos. It was, I don't know, hundreds of videos that we collected and that were edited actually for the event.
Great. So video production, and then you still maintained, I know this just because I'm at Ideas on Stage, you still maintained your budget for coaching. And were there any other sideline supports that other companies should be aware of that really helped you deliver great content?
Yeah, so also the budget for coaching was higher than in the previous years, because it was totally new experience also for our speakers, and I felt that it was important actually to give them professional support, and yeah, and then it worked fantastically, and then also we really spent much more time and also funds in creating the story. Because it was absolutely important to have a strong story to be able to put interactive and fun elements. I think you mentioned it also, the importance of the fun. So this is what we used to do. You know, we put our speakers and the leadership team in crazy situations in the past. And how do you do it? Through the screen? And so that's why we also required some additional support this year.
Great. So to wrap up here, Lenka, and this has been just such a pleasure listening to you. and speaking with you. Do you want to share what are you imagining for this future of communication or internal communications? Where are we heading?
Yeah, no, it's hard to tell and make any assumptions because as we've seen recently, it's difficult to predict the future. But I believe in general, really, in terms of how we interact in the organization, it will probably start going in this trend that we just described, that we will be enabling, or maybe the role of the internal communicators would be to enable the organization to really connect kind of on an independent level, and to just give the tools and guidance to the people to collaborate more independently. This is maybe how I could see it in the future, although I don't have anything like very specific in mind, but I can see this shift really happening. And yeah, and then in terms, because we were talking a lot about events, so yeah, I believe that in terms of events, for example, we will probably end up with some kind of a hybrid format for those, because of course for huge organizations it's maybe not also sustainable to bring all the people together in face-to-face format all the time, and we learned that the virtual events can work. So I think the combination and some balance between those two will be probably the recipe for the future. Yeah, enabling the entire organizations to connect through the digital element, but also, of course, giving the people that very important human contact and the face-to-face interaction.
Excellent. Yes. And I think we're going to just keep watching this space. I like the hybrid. I think we're entering and are in the time of both and. You know, we're just, everything is being included. And yes, if virtual is a tool we can use, let's use it. And you mentioned the word sustainability. And I think that is one of the big gifts of this very difficult last year, and 2020 was seeing how capable we are as a planet to make enormous shifts on its axis when needed. We achieved the impossible to basically stop air travel and the massive currents of travel for business that we were participating in up until that point. So why not use both virtual and in person, and maybe, in my opinion, more regional meetings, so that it also, I get concerned about the investment monetarily being allocated for only senior leaders or senior management to attend these personal events. So it's a little more on a privileged basis. We also want to make sure that there are these in-person events for people to connect at all levels at every company. Lenka, thank you so much for your time. I feel like we could just keep talking. I have so many more questions for you, and maybe there will be a part 2 down the line. But I just want to say thank you as well for being an incredible partner and collaborator and client of ours. I feel like I need to thank you from Phil. And last thing I'll say, and this is also a mark of a great leader, and particularly because female leadership is on topic these days a lot, and has been for the last few years. Something that Phil said about you was, you are such a creative person, that you took his ideas, made them and refined them, so took it to the next level, and that you felt comfortable saying no when you needed to. And I think that ability to say no, coming back to boundaries, and especially as we enter this more egalitarian way within our companies of communicating and sharing responsibility, the need to be able to say no in a kind way has never been greater. So thank you for being an example as well of a female leader who's stepping up, taking care of business, totally showing up creatively, and also setting boundaries. And I look forward to seeing how Boston Scientific thrives in the future. I wish you a beautiful evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rose. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you, and yeah, I hope we created something meaningful for the listeners, and that they will find some tips and tricks through our interview as well.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Ideas on Stage podcast, there are many more you might like, so please subscribe, leave us a review, and tell us what you think. You can find many more ideas on business communication at ideasonstage.com or by searching for Ideas on Stage on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and goodbye for now.